Originally, the Satanic Panic refers to a time of mass fear that people, especially children, were at risk of falling victim to satanic or occult activity. The panic was sparked by the publication of a book called Michelle Remembers in 1980. Michelle Remembers details the experiences that a woman named Michelle Smith had with memory recovery therapy, and how through it she remembered her mother giving her to Satanists at age 5 and being used for rituals thereafter. The book was co-written by Michelle and her psychiatrist Lawrence Pastor, who she later married. It is important to note that memory recovery therapy is a disputed practice, and according to the National Institute of Health, many memory scholars have argued that repressed memories recovered in therapy may not be based on true events. But this, of course, was not widely known at the time, so many people believe Michelle's claims. It probably didn't help that the memoir was sold as a sensationalized piece of media with the tagline, "The shocking true story of the ultimate evil, a child possessed by the devil." I can only think that would make it a little more personal to those who have children and believe in possession, of course, and would lead them to want to read the book to avoid the same thing happening to their child or see what signs to look out for. Because of Michelle Remembers, claims of satanic ritualistic abuse, or SRA, rose quickly. These fears were circulated through media like newspapers, talk shows, radios, and even morning and evening news. Michelle and Lawrence were touted as SRA experts and even interviewed on some of these talk shows, further spreading their claims and weighing in on other people's. This went as far as Lawrence Pastor being used as a consultant for the McMartin preschool trial, in which a California family who operated a preschool were accused of SRA and satanic practices in general.
1,400 children in this community have been ritualistically abused.
But were they?
The truth about Satanism is they truly do use blood, and they mix it with urine, and then they also use the real meat, the real flesh. This is what makes Satanism true.
The trial ended in 1990 with 0 convictions, though it was the longest, most expensive criminal trial in American history at that point, lasting 7 years and costing over $15 million. The LA Times called the McMartin preschool case a perfect example of social contagion, meaning beliefs and attitudes can spread so quickly through people and have such an effect that it's likened to a disease. Socially, it seems like the 80s were the perfect time for something like Michelle Remembers to become so popular. It's like the match that lit the powder keg, if you will, as it seems like this sort of moral panic had been bubbling for decades. Several waves of social changes were layering atop one another. Some examples include the civil rights movement, of course, as well as the rise of popular music genres like rock and roll, thought to be dangerous and unfavorable partly because it had been invented by Black artists. The Church of Satan, which was founded in 1966, is yet another example of this growing counterculture and pushback against more traditional conservative values, especially Christian ones. It's also been suggested that popular horror films like Rosemary's Baby, The Omen, and The Exorcist already had demonic possession in people's minds, especially in regards to children, in addition to whatever personal experiences they may have had or been told about. On top of that, the rise of serial killers like Ted Bundy, Richard Ramirez, and John Wayne Gacy, and events like the Manson murders had people worry they might be victims of senseless killings in general. Yet another example of change is the shift in nuclear family dynamics as divorce rates increase as a result of the legalization of no-fault divorce in some states. I would think another threat to the nuclear family would be several women choosing not to become mothers at all, as the sexual revolution is also taking place at this time. Married women and mothers, too, were continuing to enter the workforce en masse. By 1979, more than half of American women worked outside of their home. I would think the impact this had is there being a sense of no one home to protect the children, so to speak, or at the very least, they'll be home a lot less, leaving the children vulnerable and open to influence or even abduction.
It's 10 p.m. Do you know where your children are?
This concept of protection works on multiple levels. It isn't just physically having eyes on your children at home so that you know what they're up to. This sense of protection extends to protecting traditional Christian values, protecting the concept of the nuclear family, and any perceived threat to those values, not necessarily Satanism exclusively. Because yes, people typically want to protect their children because they love them, but children also represent a new generation of values and norms, and children can either continue on in the vein of their parents, or they can shirk their parents' views entirely, which can be viewed negatively by the parent or feel like a threat to their belief system because the child is basically rebuking their views. All of this social change and social unrest as a result together put many parents and people in general on high alert, leading them to suspect people from teachers to coaches to neighbors might want to negatively influence the youth or make them victims of SRA. The focus was also turned on a lot of media that children consumed, as this could also influence them into Satanism or adopting other undesired values. In the 1980s, a lot of rock, especially heavy metal, was a target.
Warning signs of satanic behavior may be apparent, such as a sudden, bitterly antagonistic attitude towards family and religion, a reclusive behavior pattern, and listening exclusively to heavy metal rock music, almost to the point of addiction.
One of the reasons for this was the 1984 murder of Gary Lawless committed by 17-year-old Ricky Casso, a confessed Satanist. It was reported the argument initially started over some drugs Gary may have stolen from Ricky, a known dealer, who lured him into the woods to enact vengeance. One of Ricky's friends, named James, who witnessed the act, said that Ricky told Gary to say he loved Satan prior, and Gary responded by saying he loved his mother. James also claimed Ricky said some chant to Satan afterwards. And with the amount of times that Gary had been stabbed, it was speculated it could have been a ritualistic murder, though James did also say at the time they were tripping on LSD.
Ricky Casso committed suicide in jail the day after his arrest. Despite numerous signs that Casso was into Satanism and rock music associated with devil worship, police steadfastly refused to label this case satanic. The official explanation, a drug-related crime.
This case was a nationwide sensation and led people, especially many conservative Christians, many of whom of course were parents, to believe heavy metal could potentially influence other youths to commit heinous acts. A picture of him in an AC/DC shirt was used as further proof of this, and those who knew Ricky knew that he liked to listen to groups like Black Sabbath and Judas Priest. At the time, metalheads in general were portrayed as Satanists as if the two were inherently synonymous, and that was a stereotype that was fueled by the media.
You should look further for ritual items such as a pentagram or other satanic symbols, black or red robes.
This, of course, was mostly thought to be because of the nature of the lyrics of some of the songs, and how several of them had titles that referenced Satan, hell, or the devil, no matter the context of the lyrics or of the imagery. A popular example is Motley Crue's 1983 breakout album Shout at the Devil, which has a pentagram on the cover. The album was originally titled Shout with the Devil, but bassist Nikki Sixx changed the album name after having a paranormal experience in his home. That, fueled with his constant drug use and a wreck he got into after driving under the influence, made him feel like he needed to stop shouting with the devil and instead shout at him. But because of the pentagram still on the cover, several Christian conservative groups claimed that the band was encouraging Satan worship. In 1985, a man named James Vance sued the band Judas Priest and their label CBS Records, claiming he and his friend were influenced to take their lives due to subliminal messages in their music. Prior to the attempts, the pair had spent hours listening to the band's Stained Class album, binge drinking, and smoking weed. It was later claimed there were messages in the song Better You, Better Than Me, like, try suicide, let's be dead, do it, do it, do it. James, who was age 20 at the time, survived the attempt, but his friend Raymond Belknap, who was only 18, did not. James's family sued for $6.2 million, which would be nearly $18 million today. In court, the songs were played back and front in an attempt to prove the existence of these subliminal messages. Judas Priest, who showed up in court, claimed their songs did not contain subliminals, and if they did, they would have used them to tell their fans to buy more albums.
You can say what I only can see.
Thank you. Is the exhalation of breath?
Yes.
Is that a normal part of your singing?
That's the way I've always sung. That's just my style.
Are there subliminal duets on the Better By You, Better Than Me song?
Absolutely not.
At the same time, Ozzy Osbourne and his record label were also on trial after a couple sued him, blaming his music for their 19-year-old son's death. He had taken his own life supposedly because of hidden lyrics in Ozzy's song Suicide Solution, encouraging him to do so. Ozzy said that the song had the opposite message, in fact, and was about an artist who knew who drank himself to death, so the song was more of a cautionary tale. Neither Ozzy nor Judas Priest were found to have influenced these deaths, as the case against Ozzy was thrown out in 1988, and Judas Priest and their label were exonerated in 1990. According to the New York Times, by 1992, there were over 12,000 unsubstantiated reports of SRA and other satanic activity. Former FBI agent Ken Lanning said about the hysteria at the time, "When people get emotionally involved in an issue, common sense and reason go out the window. People believe what they want and need to believe." Music wasn't the only form of media targeted. Even role-playing games like Dungeons & Dragons were seen as dangerous for promoting witchcraft and Satanism. Similarly, they were thought to be the reason for the deaths and disappearances of many youths, even if it was known they had other struggles in their lives. The roleplay aspect heightened people's beliefs that things happening in the game were real. For instance, a mother believing because her son's character in the game was cursed during a session hosted by his principal, that curse was the reason why her son later took his life. Because of several stories like these, and in the context of the Satanic Panic, the game was almost banned. And while researching, I read several accounts of people saying at the time their parents had thrown out their Dungeons and Dragons sets, or didn't allow them to go play with other people, or tossed out their fantasy books because they didn't want their children reading about any sort of witchcraft. Despite the moral panic caused by a lot of this media on one hand, it was obviously very popular and profitable on the other, with a lot of these games, bands, and movies still being very familiar with people and relevant even today. I think it's human nature when a group is loud about disliking or fearing something, especially in the entertainment realm, that can generate even more curiosity in it. Especially with young people, sometimes if your parents tell you not to listen to, read, or watch something, sometimes even if you weren't interested before. This is part of the reason that horror films, especially those teen slashers, became even more popular at this time. That and practical effects in film in general improving, so they looked more real. In 1995, the Parents Television and Media Council, then just called the Parents Television Council, was created with the aim of protecting children from immoral TV content. They're a nonprofit organization founded in Virginia that rates and summarizes media for parents so that they can decide to show it to their children or not. The organization also files complaints with the FCC over content thought to be either generally not family-friendly, indecent, or improperly rated. I've brought up their complaints in videos before, like the ones made after Miley's 2013 VMA performance or the 2004 halftime show. A newspaper campaign asking parents to support and join the PMTC claimed that TV was leading children down a moral sewer because of the violence, vulgarity, and racy material often displayed. According to an unnamed study mentioned on this advert, it was found that TV programming was implicated in 22% of juvenile crime, and that some had admitted to learning how to commit their crimes through watching TV. Over the years, the PTMC has faced quite a bit of backlash and been accused of trying to stifle people's creative freedoms and freedom of speech to promote their own conservative Christian values. Not the PTMC, but related, when I was looking for claims they made in the 90s and 2000s, I came across a separate group called Citizens Concerned About Barney, who called for the show's cancellation because Barney promoted a melange of Satanism, occultism, and witchcraft bent on weakening the resolve of impressionable tots. I always thought it was just a joke because I've seen the Barney memes and heard the Barney is the devil jokes like growing up in school, and I actually never knew that it was a real thing. In the early 2000s, the PTMC especially had it out for shows like Witch and Buffy the Vampire Slayer when it came to witchcraft and Satanism specifically. In terms of Buffy, they weren't against the existence of the show, but against children watching it because they weren't yet discerning enough Christians. MTV was often targeted by the PTMC because it was one of, if not the most popular TV network for youths. By 2004, in the United States, MTV was watched by 73% of boys and 78% of girls aged 12 to 19. The PTMC especially weren't fond of the network's spring break programming, which it was well known for. MTV Spring Break was like a concert festival, and the beach venues varied from year to year. But of course, in attendance were a lot of college students and young adults in general, so plenty of alcohol and substances to go around, lots of swimsuits and skimpy clothing being worn. The article Rebecca Hagelin ended the piece saying, "And in case you didn't realize, MTV is owned by Viacom, the same company that owns CBS, of Janet Jackson's Super Bowl wardrobe malfunction and Rathergate fame. Surprised?" She's not factually incorrect, obviously, but she is implying there might be a larger Viacom conspiracy to corrupt the youth. And of course, the PTMC took issue with specific artists either for being too racy or because they were thought to be promoting violence, witchcraft, or Satanism. For example, they came down on Rihanna for her Man Down video and called for MTV and BET, where it premiered, to pull it. A member of the PTMC claimed, "Instead of telling victims they should seek help, Rihanna released a video that gives retaliation in the form of premeditated murder, the imprimatur of acceptability." Rihanna explained that the video was meant to empower women who had been victims of violence, saying in one of her tweets, "Young girls and women all over the world, we are a lot of things. We're strong, innocent, fun, flirtatious, vulnerable, and sometimes our innocence can cause us to be naive. We always think it could never be us, but in reality it can happen to any of us, so ladies, be careful." I was still pretty young at this time, but the later 2000s, early 2010s, this is around when I started using the internet more frequently. I remember it being very common to see videos or forum posts analyzing any possible connections to the devil or Illuminati in an artist's lyrics or music videos. Similar to the alleged subliminal messages in heavy metal songs, it also became a thing to play these songs, especially hip-hop ones, backwards and frontwards in an effort to expose any hidden messages. References to the Illuminati started to become commonplace in hip-hop in the mid-90s, the first popular use being credited to Prodigy. He said on the I Shot You remix,
Illuminati want my mind, soul, and my body. Secret society, trying to keep their eye on me.
Around this time, several other rappers made references to the Illuminati or New World Order in their music. Briefly put, the Illuminati was an 18th century secret society founded by a German law professor to promote Enlightenment ideals amongst the elites. Facets of the Enlightenment included self-rule, gaining knowledge through scientific principles and reason, the fact that humans were born naturally free and inherently possessed the rights of life, liberty, and property. Many Enlightenment thinkers and principles were heavily inspired by classical Grecian philosophers such as Aristotle. Because of its reliance on science and independent thought, the Enlightenment and those who promoted its principles were often viewed as a threat to the church. The Illuminati did use symbols and rituals in their meetings, and also it established ranks to organize members in power. I know that sounds creepy, but for example, a sports team does every single one of these things. The Illuminati didn't last long, as secret societies were banned in 1785 by the Duke of Bavaria in an attempt to diminish the influence of non-church, non-government affiliated organizations on people. So many of these groups dismantled as they were exposed and punished, or out of fear of being exposed or punished. According to Vox's short summary, if you think their revolutionary ideas spread to other groups like the French Revolution's Jacobins, then they were successful. If you think those ideas would have prospered regardless, then maybe they were mainly a historical curiosity. Of course, the interest in the Illuminati persisted or even increased as documents belonging to former members were made public after their passing, often found by their family members. It's pretty common now for people to conflate the Illuminati with Freemasons, who are more common and influential in the United States, and whose foundation does also rely heavily on Enlightenment principles. In modern times, what people think of when it comes to the Illuminati, this shadowy, dark organization that's controlling the world from beyond the scenes, it's a very dramatized interpretation of what the organization actually was. There's also no concrete proof there was ever a resurgence of the Illuminati, so it's now commonly considered both by several scholars and members of the general public to be a conspiracy theory. Political scientist Joseph Usinski claimed, people will use a term like Illuminati to define anything that they don't like that might challenge their values. Tying this back into 2000s, 2010s pop culture, as I mentioned, determining which celebs, often actors or musicians, were Illuminati became a popular pastime for some and a mission almost for others. Aside from people genuinely believing in the Illuminati, believing some prominent people might be promoting it, and wanting their beliefs to be known, others fed into this because it was popular and profitable. If a piece of media was thought to have Illuminati references, it would be shared and dissected thousands of times over, which racked up the view count and often directly translated to more revenue. Chris Applebaum, director of Rihanna's Umbrella video, actually said that was a motivator for including some so-called Illuminati imagery in the video. He'd learned by that point that it was a fascination for fans and admitted to putting other such symbols in other videos he worked on through the 2000s. Jay-Z surely also comes to mind for a lot of people, myself included, because he's heavily been tied to the Illuminati conspiracies. Common evidence for this is the symbolism used in his 2009 video for On to the Next One, where you can see things like skulls, blood, and Rorschach tests some think are meant to evoke Baphomet. Some took this video as confirmation of Jay-Z's affiliation with the devil and his pride in it due to his success. In 2009, NPR published a short interview in which they claimed that Dan Brown, the author of books like The Da Vinci Code and Angels and Demons, had nothing on Jay-Z when it came to being the master of the occult or the figurehead for the craze, at least in the eyes of the general public. Run This Town is another popular example. It's another Jay-Z song with both Rihanna and Kanye West. The song and the video have the spirit of revolution, leading some to believe the revolution in question might be New World Order.
We are, yeah, I said it, we are. This is Rock Nation, pledge your allegiance.
And the rock symbol or hand triangle he and several Rock Nation affiliates, Beyonce being a huge example do, has been thought to be another admission that he's Illuminati, as it's thought to be linked to the Eye of Providence. In general, it's a dark video with lots of flames and weapons. Because of the revolution imagery, there's also a lot of hoods, veils, eye covering, and shades in the video as well. References to an eye, the hand over the eye, or covering of one eye in general, is another popular supposed sign of an artist being Illuminati. Lady Gagga was thought to be hinting at her inclusion in the secret organization in her videos for Just Dance and Poker Face, for example. In it and in live performances, she commonly covers her right eye with her hand or circles it with her fingers. More so in the earlier years of her career, Gagga was accused of being a brainwashed Illuminati puppet who through her music would make swaths of young fans susceptible to mind control. There were several conspiracy theories about her at the time, a popular one being that she sacrificed one of her peers, Lena Morgana, in order to become famous and took on her look, sound, and imagery. Before becoming a pop star in her own right, Gaga did some backup vocals for Lena and helped write for her debut album, as both were working with the producer Rob Fusari. In 2008, Lena fell from the roof of a New York hotel, which she didn't survive. Soon after, Gaga signed with Interscope, began working on The Fame, and her career took off. There was even speculation that Gaga referenced this in the Paparazzi video. And on top of that, she just incorporated a lot of darker imagery, blood, and decay into her artistry, often meant to depict the animalistic nature of fame and how it consumes a person. She's also used religious references pretty often in her music, Judas being a prime example. In the song, Lady Gaga proclaims her love for Judas, the man who sold out Jesus for 30 pieces of silver, resulting in his crucifixion. Judas has also become a metaphor for anyone who's a traitor, which is what Gaga's actually talking about in the song, being in love with a man who continuously betrays her. This is in opposition to a man who would treat her well, portrayed in the video as a Jesus figure, and Gaga herself plays a version of Mary Magdalene. So rather than Gaga just saying she loves the man who got Jesus killed, it's more complex than that, more complex than a love triangle even, I would say, and the song is more about an internal struggle to be good, even when being bad, evil, doing what you shouldn't be is so tempting, and a continuous fight for that goodness. However, several were offended at Gaga's use of Christianity to represent the struggle, which probably wasn't made much better by the song's release the week before Easter of 2011. Bill Donahue, the president of the Catholic League for Religious and Civil Rights, stated, "This is a stunt. Lady Gaga tries to continue to shock Catholics and Christians in general. She dresses as a nun. She swallows the rosary. She's now morphed into a caricature of herself. She's trying to rip off Christian idolatry to show up her talentless, mundane, and boring performances. Another ex-Catholic whose head is turned around. Is this the only way to jet up her performance? This isn't random. We are getting closer to Holy Week and Easter." This quote was included in an article from The Hollywood Reporter, who also interviewed Gaga for this piece. She said she'd gone back and forth over whether she should reference Christianity in the song or video, or go about the salvation concept a different way. And Gaga said about the song and video, "Listen, I don't want lightning to strike me. I believe in the gospel and I'm not going there." And it was amazing because to have that conversation about salvation, peace, and the search for the truth in a room of non-believers and believers, to me that was saying God is active in a big way, and the place that it came to is surreal. The Catholic League also heavily criticized Nicki Minaj's 2012 Grammy performance, pondering whether she was possessed. She appeared on the red carpet, cloaked in red, with a man dressed as the Pope on her arm. Nicki opens her performance confessing to a priest, it seems, while performing a mashup of Roman's Revenge and I Feel Pretty as her alter ego Roman. In the middle of her performance, a pre-recorded clip plays, invoking horror movies like The Exorcist. And then we transition over into the exorcism portion of the performance, which is the song Roman Holiday. Stained glass meant to depict a cathedral is projected behind Nicki, and there are dancing monks and cardinals abound. The performance ends with Nicki levitating in the middle of the stage while singing "Come All Ye Faithful," and some of those monks deliver these eerie choral vocals. Like I said, Nicki received quite a bit of backlash for this performance and the use of religious imagery. According to her, this performance was just a taste of a movie that she was working on at the time, and truly was just a theatrical way to perform both of the songs. However, the Catholic League claimed, "None of this was by accident, all of it was approved by the Recording Academy, which puts on the Grammys. Whether Minaj is possessed is surely an open question, but what is not in doubt is the irresponsibility of the Recording Academy. Never would they allow an artist to insult Judaism or Islam." The question of whether the Recording Academy approved this performance is another point of contention. In 2019, Nicki claimed that she'd been bullied into silence for years, but she was told moments before her performance that it would be pulled, it seems due to Whitney Houston's passing the night before. I've also seen it be said that she was asked minutes before the performance not to perform and chose to anyway, but I would think that's because she didn't have anything else ready. That night, Nicki lost all 5 of her nominations, including Best New Artist, and it's been speculated this performance resulted in Nicki being blackballed by the Grammys, meaning she'll never be given an award. Nicki specifically called out Grammy producer Ken Ehrlich, who Ariana Grande also accused of trying to stifle her creativity, leading her to pull out of her performing at the Grammys in 2019. And years before this, when asked about some of the worst Grammy performances he'd produced, Ken said about this, "I was not proud of what we did with Nicki Minaj 3 years ago. I thought that was a disappointment both in terms of what we did and to an extent what she did. I'm not going to absolve us of any responsibility, but it just wasn't good. If it had been controversial and good, I think I would have been proud of it. But we probably let out the string a little too much on that one." In 2013, the nonprofit Skeptic Society published a piece titled "The New Satanic Panic, Witch Hunting in the Internet Age." In it, claims are made that this new wave of the Satanic Panic, if it can even be called new, isn't much different than the hysteria that took place in the 80s and 90s. But a major difference is that because of the internet and social media, these accusations and conspiracies can reach more people and much faster than decades ago. In general, with these Illuminati theories, there is this conundrum of, are the Illuminati accusations being denied simply because they're untrue, or are they being denied because no one who's part of a secret society would openly admit it, as that defeats the purpose? My personal stance on this, and I don't know what groups do or don't exist, I wouldn't put it past any artist to do something nefarious, but I truly don't understand what would be gained by them purposely dropping hints that they're secretly part of something nefarious so that we can piece it together and try to put a stop to it. I, and honestly so many others, have felt this internet age of the Satanic Panic is still very much alive and well. The focus isn't purely on who may or may not be Illuminati, though those theories are still very common. It also seems like the focus has remained on quite a few hip-hop stars, but has also continued extending into the pop arena. Billie Eilish has been accused of having satanic connections, and even of sacrificing rapper XXXTentacion in order to become famous. And this is really what her song Bury a Friend is about. Aside from that, the imagery used in Billie's All the Good Girls Go to Hell music video had people thinking that she represented the dark side. In the video, Billie wears wings, and it's safe to assume that they're angel wings because they have feathers on them, and when they sprout out of her back in the beginning of the video, they are white. Also in the beginning, she says that her Lucifer is lonely, referencing the fallen angel turned devil. Billie also literally falls from somewhere, presumably heaven, in the beginning of the video. Once she hits Earth, her wings and eyes turn black, and she walks through a world of fire and destruction, kind of like a hell on Earth. I came across a site called the Burian Test, in which Vince Wright, who's a proud Christian, he analyzes song lyrics of all kinds to see how well they measure up to what's preached in the Bible, both in terms of how one is meant to behave themselves and general biblical accuracy. So for example, based on his criteria, Billie Eilish would earn points for accurately describing in the lyrics that the gates of heaven are pearly, because they are described that way in the Bible. She also gets points for saying that those who take bribes from Satan are sinners, because the Bible says as much as well. But Vince docks points for lyrics that reference things like committing crimes or saying the devil could use some company. This is because the Bible preaches against committing several types of crimes as well as keeping company with the devil. And though Billie is singing these things, I do think it's a little uncharitable that her tone or the actual context of the lyrics isn't fully considered. The lyric that says, "can't commit to anything but a crime," is not Billie encouraging people to commit crimes.
Standing there, killing time, can't commit to anything but a crime.
Because it's followed by a line about killing time, implying however the person being described in the song is behaving isn't useful or positive. And Billie said about All the Good Girls Go to Hell. The deeper meaning of the song is about global warming and climate strike and what's really important. The song is about the world and trying to save it, and people not believing that it needs to be saved. So it seems like this hell on earth is more of a metaphor for what Billie envisions the world to be like, albeit a very dramatized form, if people continue to bury their heads in the sand. And when they wake up and beg for salvation, aka help, it may be too late, though they were warned. In her 2019 annual Vanity Fair interview, Billie said the biggest rumor surrounding her career at that time was that she sold her soul to Satan for fame. Similar rumors swirled around Doja Cat, really gaining momentum between promotions for her albums Planet Her and Scarlet. And when it came time for her 27th birthday, people really thought that she was feeding into the Masonic Illuminati occult symbolism with her Eyes Wide Shut themed party. And Eyes Wide Shut is a 1999 Stanley Kubrick film. It's his final film, actually, and it's about a couple who joins a secret sex cult. In and onto the film, Doja also wore a cloak and a mask to her party. Her cake was also full of Illuminati symbolism and in the signature black and gold colors. When she sported a red rhinestone Schiaparelli look, in addition to her already shaved head and several new tattoos, that seemed to confirm many people's speculations that Doja was either involved with the Illuminati or something else satanic. At Fashion Week the year before, she'd sported black eye makeup, the black eye having been said to be another sign that someone's joined the Illuminati. Doja responded to all of these rumors by tweeting, "This Illuminati shit is so funny to me, I'm gonna keep doing deliberate weird ass shit just to make those people uncomfortable. I for real found a new outlet of joy." And also at this time, she engaged in a lot of online arguments with her fans, attempting to sever her parasocial relationship with them, though it did devolve into some personal attacks and name-calling. Because of this, and even other Twitter altercations that had happened years before at this point, and Doja having previously expressed discontent with her fame, there was the sense of, oh, she's acting like this because she made a deal with the devil and she's stuck and now she can't back out. These rumors, as well as Doja's desire to take a turn away from a brighter, poppier commercial sound, seemed to really inspire the creative direction taken for her fourth album, Scarlet. Again, she bathed herself in red paint, meant to evoke blood and attention, which is her lead single for the era, introducing audiences to her new alter ego, also called Scarlet. The following two singles, Paint the Town Red and Demons, again leaned into these darker references, both lyrically and visually. In Paint the Town Red, Doja rides atop this sort of goblin underworld-looking creature and communes with the Grim Reaper cloaked in red. In her opening costume, she's also wearing an arm warmer covered in red pentagrams, and in another, she's like some demonic devil ram creature. I'm not exactly sure what she's meant to be, if anything specific. And in the song itself, Doja calls herself the devil, clearly in a way that she's mentioning what people are saying about her, and likens painting the town red to upsetting people with her art, imagery, and unapologetic attitude. Demon similarly addresses the satanic allegations, with Doja essentially asking throughout the song how bothered her detractors are that she's popular despite them. And in the cover art, she's also got that black horn devil look, if she's even actually in this photo, because it does kind of look like a digital Sims edit or something. And the video shows a woman, played by Christina Ricci, trying to escape her possessed home. The house is big, so it evokes a family home, like in the Amityville Horror, The Conjuring, something like that. Doja plays the demon in this film, again in that same look, and it actually kind of reminds me a bit of Nightcrawler. And of course, this represents her position as a kind of villain or antagonist, but also one who people can't help but to concern themselves with, as if she's possessed them in that sense. Throughout these singles, even extending into the album, there's this through line that this darker satanic imagery is being used to represent how Doja views her fame, both how she feels constrained by it, but also vilified for how she deals with it. And receptions to this creative direction were of course mixed, with some thinking it was perfect to get rid of fake fans and push the envelope as all good art does. Others accused Doja of using satanic imagery simply for shock value, or that the music that was actually in Scarlet wasn't a drastic enough change from her previous music to warrant such a change in her imagery. Another artist who leaned into the satanic imagery is Lil Nas X. In March of 2021, ahead of his self-titled debut, he wrote a love letter to his younger self after having come out as gay about 2 years prior. This was followed by his lead single, Montero, named Call Me By Your Name in the parenthetical. Though the lyrics in the song are definitely suggestive, much of the Call Me By Your Name backlash was a result of the music video. And this was typically the references to Christianity, though he does a lot in this video. It resonated with many of Lil Nas X's queer fans, as many had also had Christianity weaponized against them, but Lil Nas X was still attacked for blasphemy and disrespecting Christianity with this video, namely the part where he slides down a pole to hell to give Satan a lap dance. He was also accused of attempting to indoctrinate children, and several parents said that their children would never hear another Lil Nas X song again. And he responded by saying, "I spent my entire teenage years hating myself because of the shit y'all preached would happen to me because I was gay. So I hope you are mad, stay mad, and feel the same anger you teach us to have towards yourselves." And to further lean into the backlash, he released a limited drop of Satan shoes with the art collective Mischief. Only 666 pairs were made, and aside from the red lacing and the pentagrams on the shoes, they're said to contain a drop of human blood each. Each pair was priced at $1,018, which references Luke 10:18, "I saw Satan fall like lightning from heaven." Nike, since their shoes were used, they came out and released a statement saying that they weren't affiliated with Mischief or Lil Nas X, and they didn't endorse these shoes. People were outraged, as you can definitely imagine, because of the devil imagery, but also the claim of the shoes containing human blood, which I have to agree I would not be interested in buying those either. Pastor Mark Burns called the shoes evil heresy. They were, however, said to have sold out in under a minute and are currently being resold online. And in response to this media storm, Lil Nas X posted what appeared to be an apology video for the shoes, but it quickly cuts to a clip of the ending of the Call Me By Your Name video.
"I see everybody's been talking about this shoe, and I just want to come forward and say, okay, let's ride."
Just this year, Lil Nas X came under fire again for similarly using Christian imagery to promote his intended sophomore lead single, J. Christ. From the moment the images of him dressed as Jesus and nailed to the cross were released, the criticism began. And in response and also further promotion for the song, Lil Nas X posted other things that some took as mocking Christianity yet again, like him eating a bunch of communion wafers like they were chips, or him turning into some sort of Jesus transformer. And aside from the blasphemy criticisms, this time around, people were also calling Lil Nas X a one-trick pony who needed to use rage bait for attention. He did later upload an apology to his Twitter account saying,
"When I did the artwork, I knew like there would be some upset people or whatnot. You know, religion is a very sensitive topic for a lot of people, but I also didn't mean to like mock. This wasn't like a fuck you to you people, fuck you to the Christians. Like, you know, it was not that. It was literally me saying, oh, I'm back I'm back like Jesus. Like, that was like the whole thing. I'm not the first person to dress up as Jesus. I'm not the first rapper. I'm not the first artist, and I won't be the last.
To his point, rapper Kendrick Lamar had been criticized in 2022 for performing wearing a crown of thorns and wearing it on this album cover for Missed Him Around the Big Steppers. And of course, the crown of thorns is what Jesus wore when he was crucified. Though it was used to paint Jesus as a pretender, it has come to represent the burden and the pain that he bore. I read a nice piece from the site called Get to the Corner. I believe the author's name is Jay Vaughn. And he said about rappers using this imagery, I think each artist is expressing the criticism and trials that comes with their position of influence. I guess extreme public criticism could in essence feel like a crucifixion, which is probably a logical, sensible comparison since crucifixion was a common way of public humiliation back in the day. He also included the examples of Tupac's Machiavelli album cover as well as Kanye West's Rolling Stone cover as examples of other rappers who have portrayed themselves with Jesus imagery. Looking at the J. Christ lyrics, it seems like Lil Nas X is referencing his return from his short hiatus after promoting his first album, and attacks the controversy to talk about him succeeding in spite of it and being ready to make more music was like a resurrection of sorts.
Bitch, I'm back like J. Christ. I'm finna get the gays hype. I'm finna take it yay hype.
In the chorus, the is he questions seem like things that people would ponder about God, especially when they're questioning their faith. But these are really questions Lil Nas X thinks the public are thinking about him whilst wondering what he's about to come back with. The backlash for J. Christ, as well as his underperformance upon its release as it peaked at number 69 before departing the charts the following week, seemingly has derailed Lil Nas X's comeback. And truly, I do think it's a mixture of people disliking his use of Christianity in his music already, in combination with him admittedly going overboard in a way that seemed mocking, and it just not being the first time he's used this imagery. It felt like the perfect storm. Back in 2022, Sam Smith released Unholy featuring Kim Petras as a single from their album Gloria. The song is about a father who portrays himself as this family man, but he is stepping out on his wife and missing out on time with his children, instead spending it at the Body Shop, which is a gentleman's club. And this is the unholy thing in question. I think it's interesting that this is a song that does sort of reference that threat to the nuclear family or the illusion of it in some homes. Sam has said this was a song that doesn't sit in the sadness like a lot of their previous music, but rather acknowledge a bad situation and not necessarily trivializes it, but decides not to wallow in it. Instead of a tone of anger in this song, there's this tone of like, that's funny when you catch somebody being a massive hypocrite. Unholy did actually receive positive reviews, both for Sam's vocal performance as well as the production. The song was released in late September, and I think it was released perfectly to line up with people starting to lean into those darker sounds and imagery in preparation for Halloween. Unholy won Best Pop Duo at the Grammys in 2023, and Sam and Kim also performed the song at the ceremony. They were introduced by Madonna, which I'm sure was a little nod to her being lambasted for her Like a Prayer video from 1989, which was filmed inside of a church. The Unholy performance was slammed for being satanic and ritualistic, with Sam, the dancers all being dressed in red, the flames in the background, and that haunting devilish laugh right before Sam begins. Kim performs her verse from inside of a cage. She's also dressed in red and guarded by some dancers with whips. The performance was slammed by viewers and media outlets alike for essentially being a satanic ritual with music in the background. Relatively similar to what Lil Nas X had said, Kim had said that the performance was meant to explore her and Sam's relationship with religion and kind of feeling shut out of it. And she actually said, I think a lot of people honestly have kind of labeled what I stand for and what Sam stands for as religiously not cool. And I personally grew up wondering about religion and wanting to be a part of it, but slowly realizing it didn't want me to be a part of it. So it's a take on not being able to choose religion and not being able to live the way that people might want you to live, because as a trans person, I'm already not kind of wanted in religion. So we were doing a take on that, and I was kind of Hellkeeper Kim. And in their coverage, Rolling Stone said with that performance, Sam and Kim were bringing back the Satanic Panic. The article subheading reads, right-wingers are using Pfizer sponsorship to fuel conspiracies that Satan is controlling the federal government and coming for your kids. They included reactions from Ted Cruz, who called the performance evil, as well as commentator Liz Wheeler, who said, meanwhile, demons are teaching your kids to worship Satan. I could throw up. Because Pfizer, probably best known nowadays for their COVID vaccine, was one of the ceremony sponsors, people were tweeting that they had specifically requested for Sam and Kim to do some sort of demonic performance. Ryan Bort, the author of this Rolling Stone article, noted that the culture wars had become so insidious, as he put it, that it was now easy for political figures and commentators to easily convince their followers that her performance was, as he sarcastically put it, part of a vast governmental conspiracy to turn the United States into a wasteland of fire, brimstone, and drag queens. Apparently, the Church of Satan also even weighed in on this performance, with Magister David Harris calling it nothing particularly special. Because of these examples that I've given, and honestly more, in the past couple years, several articles have been published about the resurgence of the Satanic Panic, again, if you ever think it went away. If you think about the social and civil unrest that influenced the Satanic Panic of the 80s and 90s, I believe it would be fair to argue there are parallels with today. Some sources cited Unholy as the catalyst for the resurgence of the Satanic Panic, others cited Lil Nas X. I did also see frequent mention of the 2021 Astroworld tragedy, in which 10 concert goers lost their lives and hundreds of others sustained injuries in a massive crowd crush. There were several online theories about this not just being a preventable accident that was handled poorly by Travis and his team, but an intentional sacrifice on his part. I remember even seeing some people claim the concert was a portal to hell, and I can't remember if it was actual attendees who said that. But there was a lot of talk about how dark the energy was and how it should have been clear that something sinister was going to take place that night. In their piece on the resurgence of the Satanic Panic, Billboard questioned whether it's mainly queer artists who were targeted by this new wave. They included a quote from author Paul Carup, who actually wrote a book about the paranoia of the Satanic Panic in the 80s. He claimed, "You saw a lot of the same stuff in the 80s. Everyone kind of distanced themselves from all of that for a while, and it seemed like we culturally agreed that this was a stupid concern in the first place. But in the last 3 or 4 years, these concerns have risen up again." Carup also makes the point there's no concrete proof any Gen Xers were negatively affected by any of the music involved in the first wave of the Satanic Panic, because again, correlation is not causation. This means that it would be reasonable to believe that people aren't at any more risk today, at least to a degree that it can be proven any of this music or imagery was the cause. Carup and others interviewed for this piece know that this targeting can fall into the stereotype that queer people are inherently evil or satanic, or they have this agenda to groom others to be so based on artistic presentation alone. It also makes sense, as several of these artists have explained, that it's often because of their queerness that they had a troubled relationship with Christianity, even if they do identify as Christians, so it makes sense we may see them work through that relationship or represent it in their work. Alongside this, it's clear conversations are also being had about where the line is, so to speak, when it comes to incorporating religious imagery, Christianity for the sake of this video, into your artwork. Because it's not true that everyone who's offended by or dislikes the use of religion in artistry dislikes it because they believe it's satanic. There are some instances where it's simply viewed as disrespectful. For example, last year, Sabrina Carpenter received backlash for filming part of her Feather music video inside of the Blessed Virgin Mary Catholic Church, with the Diocese of Brooklyn calling it violent and sexually provocative. Apparently, this resulted in the priest who allowed Sabrina and her team permission to film the video having his administrative duties revoked, and a bishop performed a cleansing after the shoot. And in response to this controversy, Sabrina stated, "We got approval in advance, and Jesus was a carpenter." Later at Coachella, she wore a shirt with the same phrase on it. Like I was saying, personally, I did not see anyone calling Sabrina necessarily satanic for this, but just saying they felt like she was playing with their religion and then doubled down with a pun instead of an apology. A similar situation happened earlier this year with K-pop group LE SSERAFIM, who filmed the video for their song Easy inside of the Emmanuel Presbyterian Church in LA. Aside from some finding the church setting in general inappropriate, it was noticed some LED lights and decorations were added, and the group's logo was put over some of the crosses in the church. Aside from that, LE SSERAFIM was criticized for wearing revealing outfits and doing kind of suggestive choreography within the church. I don't think LE SSERAFIM or HYBE spoke up about the controversy, though a lot of netizens weighed in on the issue on either side. I don't think this got as much attention, maybe it did, but back when they were releasing their song Unforgiven and doing a lot of promotions for that and their album, I also remember some people being upset at a lot of the angel imagery that was used in those videos. Especially in a song where the group is talking about being unforgiven and calling themselves villains. But I think within the context of the song, it more so ties into being unapologetically oneself and being okay with looking like the villain and being perceived as this fallen angel potentially because you want to forge your own path. That also ties into the larger concept of the album, which is probably why the song Unforgiven is also the title track. And then also, aside from the concept, it could be a nod from the group's name and concept as a whole, as seraphim or angels, and it also links back to the concept of fearlessness, which is also in the group's name. Something I saw a few times, both in the Sabrina and LE SSERAFIM cases, is that it seems like, especially in the US, I'm not sure if this is true for the West in general, it seems like it's passable to reference Christianity in your work, even in a way that might seem mocking or disrespectful, but were another religion used, then people would think it offensive. And again, this question of where the line exists is a very blurry one. If Christianity or religion in general plays a large role in people's lives, or if they have any experience or perspective on it, then it's logical for it to show up in their work, especially if their work is personal. On the other hand, especially in the West, but I would think globally too at this point to an extent, a lot of concepts in Christianity are so widespread and understood that they can and often are used artistically as a sort of shorthand. I do also think there's this more general sense of moral decay that people have observed. If you're online, you've likely seen a lot of comments about how people, both in person and online, seem to be so much meaner to one another now, and how people feel like they don't owe anyone anything, things of that nature. Because people have had so many negative interactions or are primed to expect them and perpetuate that feedback loop, there seems to be this general sense of both disconnect and distrust. Think about how much content you see a day saying that someone is trying to harm you, be it physically or spiritually. And when you feel that you can't trust others, then you may be more likely to think that they may harm you, or at the very least do not have your best interests at heart. That being said, I do think it's been proven more than justified for people to have a level of distrust, especially in terms of a lot of people in music, film, the entertainment industry in general. Several people have already known the entertainment industry is a very dark place, and people inside of it have also come forward with their stories of abuse and exploitation. It does seem, though, over the past decade or so, this has become more and more frequent. Child entertainers have spoken up about how they were overworked, introduced to substances as a minor, assaulted, or otherwise exploited. In the past 8 years alone, we've seen moguls like Harvey Weinstein, Dan Schneider, Sean Combs, aka P. Diddy, be held accountable for years of abuse, both of their power and those that they worked with, and it's likely even more names will come with time. I do wonder, as a lot of these heinous acts these people commit come to light in a far more concrete way than they ever have before, I wonder how this will affect the Satanic Panic, as in might it die down some, if even just a bit. Because it seems like it's easier when we feel or even know that something is off, but not quite what, to attribute it to these abstract, sometimes fantastical things. I also believe that sometimes it can be hard to come to terms with the fact that some human beings are simply evil in incomprehensible ways, and often seek out people just as twisted as them to not only protect them, but help them victimize other people. It's even harder to think some people are this evil for no real reason and haven't been forced or bewitched to be, but simply choose to be. And they can look or maybe even behave in their public lives just like you or me, so sometimes we have no idea for quite a while just what they're up to if we ever find out. As always, thank you so much for watching. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe so that you can stick around for more. And if you'd like to become a channel member and get early access to videos, the link is in the description. Again, thank you so much for watching. I love you all so very much, and we'll see you so very soon. Bye-bye.